Some days feel like carrying the weight of the world with no place to set it down. You're not lazy, you're not broken, you're simply disconnected from yourself, from your purpose, from your power. And that disconnection has a solution. If you've been feeling emotionally drained, mentally stuck, or spiritually numb, you're not alone. In fact, more people than you think walk through life feeling hollow behind the smile. And that inner emptiness, it's not a flaw, it's a message. A signal to slow down, to listen. Stoic philosophy teaches us something radically simple. You don't control everything that happens, but you do control how you respond. And when life feels too heavy to bear, your response is everything. This video is not about hyping you up. It's about waking you up to a strength that's quiet, steady, and always within reach. We're going to unpack what emotional fatigue really means, how to reset your mental energy, and why the Stoic mindset can help you stop chasing peace and start building it from within. If you've ever whispered to yourself, "I just can't do this anymore," stay with me. By the end of this, you'll have not just hope, but a way forward. So pause for a moment, breathe, and let's begin. If this resonates with you, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel, because someone out there needs this as much as you do. 1. Emotional emptiness is a signal, not a defect. You wake up, but the world feels dim. You go through the motions, emails, meetings, errands, but deep down there's a dull echo, like something inside has gone quiet. You try to explain it, maybe even to yourself, but nothing quite fits. It's not sadness exactly, not exhaustion either. It's a hollow space that grows louder in silence. Many call it burnout, others call it depression. But what if it's something else? What if this emptiness is not a malfunction, but a message? In a world that rewards constant output, nonstop momentum, and polished perfection, we've forgotten the weight of stillness. We confuse numbness with weakness. But numbness is not weakness. It's overload. It's your mind saying, "I can't hear myself anymore." And for many, that's exactly what emotional emptiness is. The result of chasing everything outside while neglecting what's within. It doesn't begin with tragedy. Often, it begins with subtle disconnection. A slow drift from the things that once made you feel alive. The job you were proud of becomes mechanical. The people around you feel distant even when they're near. The excitement that used to spark now barely flickers. And yet society insists you keep going. Post a photo, smile through the noise, achieve more, hustle harder, as if performance can replace presence. The truth is, most people are running from silence. They're afraid that stopping will expose what they've been avoiding. But silence is not the enemy. In Stoic thought, silence is clarity. It's the space where truth lives. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." When your inner world is cluttered with expectations, comparisons, and noise, you lose touch with the real you. What you're feeling, this sense of loss, is not failure. It's feedback. It's your deeper self trying to be heard. The modern world doesn't teach us how to listen inward. It teaches us to accumulate, to chase validation, status, and distraction. But emptiness can't be filled by more. You can scroll endlessly, binge watch for hours, even succeed wildly in your career, and still feel nothing. Because what you crave isn't quantity, it's connection, it's alignment. Take Mark, a man in his late 40s. Respected manager, father of 3, great salary, good health. On the surface, life looked full, but each night after the house went quiet, he sat alone with a strange ache in his chest. Nothing had gone wrong, and that's what made it worse. Why do I feel this way when I have everything? He wondered. Until one night he left his phone, stepped outside, and just walked. No destination, just him, the cold air, and a question he hadn't asked in years. What part of me have I been ignoring? That question didn't change his life overnight, but it opened the door. Slowly, Mark made time for small things. Morning journaling, short walks without music, 5 minutes of silence after work. Not to be productive, just to feel present. And gradually the heaviness began to lift, not because he fixed anything, but because he remembered how to listen. You don't have to escape your life to feel whole again. You only need to return to it with attention. That's what the Stoics understood. Life doesn't need to be more exciting or easier. It needs to be more real, and that starts by pausing the race and asking yourself, what am I running from? Here's something to try tonight. After you brush your teeth, turn off your phone. Sit in stillness for 2 minutes. Don't fix anything. Don't analyze. Just sit and breathe. If discomfort rises, let it. If emotion surfaces, welcome it. The goal is not control, it's awareness. Because awareness is where reconnection begins. That quiet ache you carry is not proof that you're broken. It's proof that something within you still longs to be alive. And that longing? That's the most honest part of you. Don't silence it. Don't outrun it. Let it lead you home. 2. Resilience begins where comfort ends. Strength doesn't always look like clenched fists or loud victories. Sometimes it shows up as the quiet act of rising, again, after another night of doubt, after another day that didn't go as planned. And when life feels like a series of losses stitched together, the most radical thing you can do is not give up. That's resilience. Not perfection, not relentless positivity, just showing up with what you have, however small it feels. We often think resilience is a personality trait, something some people are born with. But resilience is not inherited. It's cultivated. It's the quiet muscle of the mind that grows each time we choose not to break. And like all things that grow, it starts beneath the surface. No one sees your internal battles. No one applauds your silent effort to keep going when your spirit feels worn thin. But that invisible choice, again and again, is where real inner strength lives. Painful seasons don't mean you're failing. They mean you're alive. They mean you're human. But many people reject this. They believe that discomfort must be fixed or avoided, that if something hurts, something's wrong. So they reach for distractions, blame their circumstances, or retreat from the world. But avoidance is not peace, it's a postponement. And the longer we postpone facing what's real, the heavier it becomes. The Stoics understood this deeply. They didn't see pain as an interruption of life. They saw it as part of life's fabric. Epictetus reminded us, difficulties are things that show a person what they are. In other words, hardship doesn't diminish you, it reveals you, but only if you stay present long enough to face it honestly. When things fall apart, our first instinct is often to patch them quickly, to search for control. But what if you didn't need to fix the chaos right away? What if your only job was to remain grounded, to let the dust settle before you react? In the modern world, where everything urges immediacy, this feels counterintuitive. But slowing down isn't weakness, it's a strategy. It creates the clarity necessary to move with intention rather than panic. Think of someone walking through a snowstorm. Visibility is low, the cold bites at their skin. Each step forward is uncertain. But stopping completely means freezing, and sprinting means collapsing too soon. So they do the only thing that makes sense. They walk slowly, one deliberate step at a time. Resilience isn't about speed, it's about steadiness. David, a construction worker in his early 50s, faced a year he never saw coming. Laid off during a company restructuring, separated from his wife, struggling to connect with his grown children. He said the hardest part wasn't losing those things, it was waking up with no map, no clear next step. Friends told him to stay strong or keep busy, but that felt hollow. So instead, he did something simple. He woke up each day and made his bed. Then he walked for 10 minutes. He cooked one meal for himself without rushing. He read one page of a book he'd started years ago, not because these acts were impressive, but because they were anchors. They reminded him he was still here, still choosing, still moving, even in the fog. The mistake many make is assuming that resilience must feel heroic. To be strong, you have to feel strong. But that's not how inner strength works. Often it feels like doubt, like shaking hands, like small progress, and that's enough. Stoicism teaches us that resilience isn't the absence of struggle, it's the commitment to face life as it is, without fleeing, without numbing, without pretending. If you find yourself today staring at a wall you don't know how to climb, you're not weak, you're just tired. And that's okay. Take the next step, no matter how small. Clean a corner of your room. Step outside and feel the air. Drink water and finish it. Name what you're feeling without judging it. These actions, as modest as they are, pull you back into presence. In the silence between breaking down and bouncing back, there's a space. That space is yours. Fill it with breath, with honesty, with the awareness that surviving isn't passive, it's the work of the brave. Don't rush the comeback. Let it come slowly, like sunrise over frost. And while you wait, keep walking, because strength is not in never falling, It's in learning how to rise with gentleness again and again until the heaviness becomes lighter, not because the world changed, but because you did. Quietly, from the inside. 3. Your inner voice can heal or hurt. A quiet whisper inside can shape the entire course of a day. Not the world outside, not the chaos on the news, not even the tasks undone, but a single thought, repeated often enough, can build a wall around your spirit or open a door. That voice within, the one that no one hears but you, carries more weight than you realize. And depending on how it speaks, it can either keep you standing or slowly pull you under. Most people don't notice it at first. It starts subtly when you're tired, discouraged, or alone. A passing thought like "I'm not doing enough" or "I've failed again" slides in unnoticed, but left unchecked it returns. It repeats. It becomes familiar, and eventually it becomes fact. Not because it's true, but because you've heard it so often. What we repeat, we believe, and what we believe, we become. The inner critic thrives in isolation. When you're disconnected from your values, when your routine feels like survival, when you're too exhausted to question the voice, that's when it gets louder. That's when small doubts become assumptions. I'm too far behind. No one understands. I'm wasting my time. These aren't insights. They're loops. And the longer they run, the more they drain your emotional energy. Stoic philosophy reminds us that we don't suffer because of events themselves, but because of how we interpret them. Epictetus wrote, "Men are disturbed not by things, but by the views which they take of them." In other words, the story you tell yourself is more powerful than the situation you face. And your thoughts? They are not facts. They are frames. You can change them. This doesn't mean forcing fake positivity. Stoicism doesn't ask you to chant affirmations in the mirror or deny pain. It invites you to question the voice that speaks when you're most vulnerable. To ask, is this thought useful? Is it true? Would I say this to someone I love? If the answer is no, it doesn't belong inside you. Take Alex, a 42-year-old who had spent years building his business only to watch it dissolve in a matter of months during a downturn. He didn't just lose clients, he lost confidence. Every morning, he woke up with that voice saying, "You're a failure. You've let everyone down." And the worst part was, he didn't even argue back. It felt too real, too loud. One day, instead of reaching for his phone or opening emails, he sat quietly with a notebook. He wrote down every thought that had been circling in his mind. Just 5 minutes. He didn't edit. He didn't try to sound wise. He simply named the noise. And when he read it back, something shifted. Half of those thoughts weren't rational. They were fearful, ashamed, and fatigued speaking. So he tried something different. For each thought, he wrote one more that was kinder, still honest, but less punishing. "I failed" became "I'm learning how to start again." "No one believes in me" became "some haven't, but that doesn't mean I can't." This wasn't therapy, it wasn't magic. But it gave him space, a pause between thought and reaction, a moment to breathe before judgment rushed in. That's what Stoicism offers. Not empty slogans, but the power to pause, to observe, to choose. That power begins with awareness. The most common mistake people make is thinking their thoughts define them. That if you think something dark, it must mean something about who you are. But thoughts are not identity. They're weather. They pass through. And when you train your mind to notice them without attachment, you stop becoming the storm. You become the sky it moves through. This week, find one moment, perhaps in the evening when things go quiet, and sit for 3 minutes with your thoughts. No distractions. Just listen. When something unkind arises, don't react. Just name it. Self-doubt, guilt, regret. Then ask, is this helping me grow? If not, imagine you're speaking to someone else, someone you love. How would you answer them? You're not broken for having negative thoughts. You're human. The strength lies not in having only good ones, but in choosing which ones to follow. Over time, this changes everything. Your relationships, your energy, your sense of direction. Because when the voice inside becomes more supportive than critical, your life doesn't just feel lighter, it becomes lighter. And the world outside may remain the same, but how you move through it transforms, quietly, steadily, one thought at a time. 4. Purpose is built, not found. Some mornings don't begin with urgency. They begin with stillness that feels more like doubt than peace. You stand in the kitchen with coffee in hand, staring out the window, wondering why the day feels heavier than it should. The to-do list is full, the house is quiet, and yet, something inside you hesitates. It's not about procrastination, it's something deeper. A quiet question that doesn't always find words. What's the point of all this? That question isn't a weakness, it's wisdom knocking. In a world obsessed with clarity, we're told that purpose should be bold and certain, that it should drive us out of bed like a mission. But purpose isn't always a lightning strike. Often, it's a slow ember. It's not something you find like treasure, it's something you create by showing up, even when the meaning isn't obvious. And the truth is, waiting to feel purposeful before acting often leads to stagnation, not revelation. We're sold this image of purpose as grand and singular, something heroic, a career that changes the world, a passion so strong it sets fire to everything in its path. But most lives don't work that way. Most meaning is made in silence, in the unrecorded, unseen, often repetitive acts of care, presence, and effort. Not in shouting, but in staying. The Stoics never romanticized destiny, they grounded it. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Don't waste time arguing about what a good man should be one." That line alone dismantles the myth that purpose is something to chase. It suggests something else, that purpose is not an idea, it's a practice. Instead of asking, "What am I here for?" try asking, "What can I contribute today that aligns with my values?" The answer may not be glamorous, it may not be exciting, but it will be real. For David, a 59-year-old electrician who had quietly worked the same job for decades, purpose never arrived with clarity. It arrived with consistency. He didn't always love his job, but he cared about doing it right. He trained younger workers when no one asked. He stayed behind to fix things no one noticed. Years later, one of those workers called him and said, "The way you showed up every day helped me stay afloat during the worst year of my life." David had no idea, but the purpose had been in the details all along. The mistake we make is waiting for life to hand us a calling like a sealed envelope. But Stoicism teaches that meaning is not given. It's shaped. It lives in action, in discipline, in choosing how you show up, even when the result feels small. Purpose, in this sense, becomes accessible. It's no longer a mountaintop reserved for the extraordinary. It becomes a habit of showing up, even for the ordinary. When you feel aimless, don't panic. Don't assume something is wrong with you. Life isn't a constant epiphany. It's a rhythm. The more you practice being present with what's in front of you, the more you uncover the threads that connect your actions to something bigger than comfort or outcome. Washing the dishes while being fully there, walking your dog without a podcast in your ears, writing down one thought before bed, all of it counts. When done with attention, the small becomes sacred. In this way, purpose becomes less about achievement and more about integrity, less about passion and more about alignment. Seneca believed that life is long if you know how to use it. He didn't mean to use it to impress or accumulate, but to live with clarity in how you act, speak, and respond. A purposeful life is often a simple one. It just asks that you stop drifting. If the weight of meaninglessness is sitting on your chest, begin here. Pause. Take one deliberate breath. Ask yourself, not what your life purpose is, but what matters to you right now. Then do something, one small act that reflects that value. Whether it's writing a message to a friend you've ignored or spending 5 undistracted minutes in silence, that action is a vote toward purpose. You don't have to see the whole path. You just have to walk the next few steps like they matter, because they do. And when done with presence, even the quietest day becomes part of something larger than it seems. Not because it looks impressive from the outside, but because it holds meaning on the inside. Purpose isn't out there waiting. It's already within reach, waiting for you to build it, breath by breath. 5. Pain is temporary, perspective is powerful. Even the strongest minds can be clouded by pain when it lingers long enough. Not the kind that cuts suddenly, but the kind that stays, quiet and persistent. It seeps into daily moments, making everything heavier. And in those moments when clarity feels far away and the body tenses for no reason, it's easy to believe that something is deeply wrong with you. But what if pain wasn't a flaw? What if it was part of the natural process of realignment? Pain, whether physical or emotional, is often treated as something we must eliminate quickly. That's the cultural instinct. Take a pill, distract yourself, push through. Productivity becomes the mask we wear over suffering. But Stoic philosophy sees pain differently. It sees it not as something to conquer, but as something to understand. Pain isn't just discomfort, it's information. It points to friction. And friction means movement, change. When we feel overwhelmed by sadness, frustration, or fatigue, the default response is to resist, to label it as a weakness. But resistance often deepens the wound. Pain intensifies when we try to outpace it, like running on a sprained ankle. It doesn't heal because we're not allowing it the space to breathe. The Stoics never taught avoidance. They taught awareness. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment." That idea isn't about denial. It's about returning power to where it belongs, your interpretation. Because the truth is, much of what hurts isn't the event itself, but the weight we place upon it. The fear that it will never end. The thought that this feeling defines us. But all feelings are movements. They pass. And the space between their coming and going is where we get to choose how we respond. Think of Maya, 38, who experienced months of insomnia after losing her father. She wasn't just tired, she was drowning in restlessness. Every night, she'd lie in bed, dreading the dark. Her thoughts would spiral, her chest would tighten, and her breath would feel short. She tried melatonin, sound machines, and herbal tea. Nothing worked. Until one evening, she stopped trying. She turned off everything and sat in silence, not to sleep, just to sit. She let the grief rise without fighting it. She whispered aloud, "I miss him," and let the wave move through her. That night she slept. Not perfectly, not deeply, but peacefully enough to begin again. She didn't fix her pain, she met it, and that meeting changed her relationship with it. Pain is not the enemy. Our fear of pain, our resistance to it, often is. In practical terms, this means creating small rituals of return. When anxiety tightens your chest, pause and breathe in for 4 counts. Hold for 4, exhale for 4. Not to escape, but to ground. When hopelessness visits you in the middle of the day, stand up. Walk outside if you can. Feel the sun or the wind, even if briefly. Name what's happening out loud. "I feel heavy right now." This naming is not a weakness, it's presence. And presence is where pain loses its edge. Stoicism teaches that pain isn't the end of stability. It can be the beginning of transformation. Like how scar tissue forms, not as a sign of failure, but of healing underway. Seneca said, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." The strength you build through pain isn't loud, it doesn't roar. It deepens you. And when you notice yourself spiraling, telling yourself this will never end, gently interrupt that voice. Replace it not with false cheer, but with grounded truth. This will pass. It always does. Think of the last time you thought you wouldn't recover, and yet you did. Not because you had all the answers, but because you kept showing up. This evening, if the day has felt too much, sit in a dim room. No screens, just stillness. Let your breathing slow. Say one thing you're carrying, and then say one thing you still have. Let both truths sit side by side. You're not trying to erase the pain, you're trying to hold it differently. And sometimes that changes everything. Pain is temporary, but perspective is lasting. When you meet discomfort with clarity instead of panic, with breath instead of reaction, you change the nature of the experience. You remind yourself that you are not the pain, you are the one who feels it. And more importantly, you are the one who can release it, one quiet moment at a time. 6. Recovering energy starts with boundaries and habits. Some exhaustion doesn't come from lack of sleep. It comes from carrying what you were never meant to hold, from saying yes when your body said no, from living in reaction instead of rhythm. Fatigue like that doesn't leave with a weekend off. It lingers. It settles into your shoulders, into the heaviness of small tasks, into the quiet ache behind your eyes. And in a world that worships productivity, this kind of depletion often goes unnoticed until it becomes unbearable. Real tiredness often hides behind noise. It's not just the physical tiredness of long hours. It's the emotional drain of overextending, of being always available, always proving, always giving more than you replenish. People don't burn out because they're weak. They burn out because they're constantly on fire, silently for too long. The culture of keep pushing makes rest feel like guilt. But the Stoics remind us, peace is a choice. And sometimes the wisest thing you can do is stop. Rest is not an escape. It's preparation. It's the ground where clarity grows. Yet most people only stop when they crash, when the body refuses, when the mind goes blank, when motivation vanishes. But recovery doesn't begin with doing nothing. It begins with choosing better inputs. You're not a machine. You're not a battery to be drained and recharged overnight. You're a living system, and like any system, you need space, rhythm, and balance. Stoicism encourages deliberate living. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." That mastery doesn't come from force. It comes from boundaries, from knowing what you can offer and when to say, "That's enough for now." And from understanding that energy isn't only used, it's also lost through leaks, small choices, habits, and obligations that chip away at your inner peace. Daniel, a small business owner, realized this after months of unexplained fatigue. He was sleeping 8 hours, eating clean, and exercising. But each afternoon, he'd feel the fog roll in. His focus would vanish. He felt anxious even during rest. One evening, instead of scrolling or watching another video, he wrote down everything that demanded his attention in a day. The list was longer than he expected. Client calls, text messages, last-minute favors, social obligations, even things he agreed to but didn't want. None of them felt massive, but they were constant. Drip by drip, they left him dry. That night, he drew a line through 3 commitments. He sent 2 messages to cancel politely. He put his phone on silent for the next hour. Then he stepped outside and walked, slowly, without a podcast, without distraction. The silence felt awkward at first. Then it felt necessary. In the following weeks, he didn't change everything. But each day, he chose one boundary to hold, and his energy returned, not all at once, but in steady waves. Recovery, in the Stoic sense, isn't about isolation. It's about reconnection with the self, with natural rhythm, with quiet. When you don't give yourself time to reset, your life becomes noise. And in noise, you lose direction. That's why small habits matter, not because they impress anyone, but because they anchor you back into control. A few moments of solitude, a screen-free evening, a walk at your own pace, drinking water and actually tasting it, saying no calmly and without explanation. Modern culture may equate rest with weakness, but wisdom has always known better. The strongest people aren't those who never pause. They're the ones who know when to pause and why. You don't regain energy by doing more. You regain it by doing what aligns with who you are when no one's watching. The right habits don't just restore your body, they rewire your spirit. So tonight, as the noise of the day settles, ask yourself, where am I spending energy I don't have? Then reclaim one piece of it. Turn off notifications for an hour. Take a bath. Close your laptop before bed. Let your last thoughts be your own, not the voices of others. This isn't indulgence, it's maintenance. Just like you wouldn't drive a car without checking the oil, don't run your mind without checking your limits. You don't have to burn out to earn rest. You don't need to collapse to deserve quiet. Build it in, on purpose, in small doses, like medicine for your nervous system. Over time, your energy won't just come back, it will become more stable. And in that steadiness, you'll find clarity. Not because life became easier, but because your inner world did, one mindful choice at a time. 7. Reframe the narrative. Some storms don't come with thunder. They arrive quietly, dressed as routine, and sit with you through the day like a fog that won't lift. You get things done, you show up, but inside, the world feels colorless. The weight isn't from what happened, but from how you've been telling the story of what happened. Most people don't notice the frame they've been living inside. They don't realize how a single thought, repeated in silence, becomes the lens through which everything is judged. Not because it's accurate, but because it's familiar. The narrative you carry shapes how you interpret setbacks, how you relate to others, how you speak to yourself when things fall apart. And often, we inherit these stories without ever choosing them. The story that says you're only valuable when productive, that emotions are inconvenient, that if you're not winning, something must be wrong. These ideas don't show up as beliefs, they arrive as assumptions, background noise, but they direct everything. Stoic philosophy invites a different approach. It doesn't deny emotion or struggle, it simply reminds you to look at the frame before reacting to the image. Epictetus wrote, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." That isn't a call to ignore your experience. It's an invitation to meet it with a wider view, to step back, to ask, what else could this mean? Not because the pain isn't real, but because the meaning isn't fixed. When Jonah's startup collapsed, he didn't just lose a business, he lost his sense of self. His inner voice looped endlessly. You failed. You wasted years. You let everyone down. He replayed every mistake, every missed signal. But something shifted one afternoon when he was clearing out a storage unit. He found an old whiteboard with scribbled ideas from the company's early days. Raw, uncertain, ambitious. He remembered the long nights of learning, the connections made, and the courage it took to try. That memory cracked the story. What had once been a narrative of shame started to become a narrative of growth. Not overnight, but gradually. The facts didn't change. The framing did. Reframing doesn't mean lying to yourself. It means telling the whole truth. The painful part, yes, but also the part where you kept going, where you tried, where you loved despite uncertainty. Most minds default to worst-case scenarios. It's how we think we stay safe. But in reality, it traps us in helplessness. That's why Stoicism emphasizes awareness. Before you can shift the narrative, you must first hear it clearly. Start small. When something feels overwhelming, pause. Label the story you're telling yourself. This always happens to me. I'm not good enough. Nothing ever works out. Then gently question it. Ask if you'd say those words to a friend. If not, rewrite them, not to sugarcoat, but to balance. This is hard, but I've handled hard things before. I made mistakes, but I also showed up. These aren't affirmations. They're real, grounded alternatives to stories that have gone unchallenged for too long. Framing matters because it determines your next step. When you see yourself as powerless, you stop trying. When you believe you're already broken, healing feels impossible. But when you see the setback as part of the climb, not the end of it, you move differently. You carry yourself with less panic, more patience. Seneca once said, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." And the imagination is exactly where narratives live. You may not control the event, but you control how long it echoes. How often do you replay it, and what version of it do you hold on to? This evening, take 5 minutes alone. Think of one moment this week that drained you. Replay it, not to relive it, but to reframe it. What did you assume about yourself in that moment? What else might be true? What did you survive? What did you learn? Then write it down, one sentence in your own voice, not the inner critic's. Repeat that sentence aloud once. Feel what changes, even if slightly. The frame is never neutral. It either closes your vision or expands it. And when you choose a frame rooted in clarity and compassion, not delusion, not denial, you don't just see your life differently. You start to live it differently. With more steadiness, with fewer sharp edges. With a voice inside that no longer drags you down but walks beside you, step by step, into something quieter, deeper, and far more honest. 8. Tiny steps lead to transformation. A heavy life rarely needs a dramatic change. Most of the time, it just needs a gentle shift, one small action that pulls you back to yourself. Not a full reinvention, not a breakthrough moment, just a quiet return to the present. The idea that transformation comes in grand, cinematic waves is comforting to imagine, but rarely true. More often, healing hides in tiny, consistent steps. We are conditioned to believe that if we're not making massive progress, we're stuck. If life feels stagnant, it's because we're not trying hard enough. But that belief is a trap. It ignores the truth that real, lasting growth is usually invisible in the moment. It happens when you show up again after a bad day, when you speak kindly to yourself after falling short, when you do the simple thing, even when it feels pointless. Stoic thought honors that simplicity. It teaches discipline, presence, and conscious repetition. Marcus Aurelius didn't tell us to chase constant change. He reminded us to be tolerant with others and strict with yourself. Not in punishment, but in devotion. Devotion to showing up, to follow your path with clarity, not noise. And clarity often begins with something so small, it's easy to dismiss. When Lisa, a retired nurse, found herself overwhelmed by loneliness after her children moved away, she tried to distract herself with busy work, organizing closets, watching endless videos, and planning short trips. But the stillness always returned. It crept in during the quiet hours. One morning, instead of rushing into another task, she sat at the kitchen table and wrote one sentence: "I'm still here." The next day she wrote one more, then another. Over the weeks, her morning notes turned into reflections. Not profound, not poetic, but steady. And with that steadiness, she began to feel grounded again. Not because the loneliness vanished, but because she had created a small space for truth. Tiny steps are not small because of their size. They are small because of their scale, but their impact is often the most enduring. The mind resists them because they don't feel impressive, but the soul recognizes them as necessary. Walking for 10 minutes after dinner, making your bed in silence, drinking a glass of water without multitasking. Looking someone in the eye when you say thank you. These are not life-changing in isolation, but repeated daily, they rewire your rhythm, they reintroduce agency. Many people wait until they feel ready to change. They wait for motivation, for inspiration, for the spark to return. But readiness is not a feeling, it's a choice. A small one, made quietly. And that's what Stoicism quietly reminds us. You do not control how you feel each day, but you always control what you do next. In moments when the heaviness feels overwhelming, don't ask, how do I fix everything? Instead ask, what's the next right action I can take right now? Then take it, no matter how small. That action doesn't need to be beautiful. It needs to be honest. If all you do today is get up, shower, and open a window, that's movement. If you sit on the edge of your bed and name one thing you're grateful for, that's a shift in energy. And once you start, even the smallest progress feels different than standing still. In a world built to overstimulate, slowing down can feel like defeat. But slowing down is not stopping. It's choosing presence over panic. It's choosing depth over distraction. It's reminding yourself that peace isn't found in doing more. It's found in doing what matters, and doing it consistently. So when your life feels stalled, when you can't see a way forward, pause. Don't map the whole path. Just ask, what can I do with this 1 hour? And let that be enough. The transformation you're hoping for might not come with fireworks. It might come with a soft exhale, a cup of warm tea, a walk in the cold, a phone call you've delayed, a habit you quietly return to without needing applause. This evening, let the final hour before sleep belong to you. Do something small and real. Write 3 words about how you feel. Light a candle. Fold clothes in silence. These aren't chores, they're rituals. They pull you back from the edge and remind you that you're not as lost as you think, that you don't need a new version of yourself. You just need to return to the one who's always been here, waiting beneath the noise. One simple, sacred step at a time. When life feels heavy, it is not always a sign of weakness. Sometimes it is a quiet invitation. A moment asking you to pause, to reflect, and to remember who you are beneath the noise. Throughout this journey, we've seen how emotional emptiness, fatigue, and confusion are not flaws, but signals. Signals that guide us back to what matters. To present, to awareness, to the still, steady strength that Stoic wisdom helps us uncover. You don't need to change everything overnight. What you need is daily consistency. Small, deliberate actions that anchor you when the world feels uncertain. Whether it's reframing your thoughts, setting boundaries, sitting in silence, or simply taking a breath before reacting, each act becomes a step toward resilience. Stoicism reminds us that you don't control every storm, but you always control your response. The core lesson here is simple, yet transformative. Peace isn't found by doing more. It's found in how you meet each moment. When you shift your focus from results to rhythm, from chaos to clarity, you begin to live from the inside out. That's where emotional strength is built, not through perfection, but through practice. So tonight, choose one thing, one small practice that brings you back to center. Let it be quiet, let it be yours, and return to it each day as a gift to yourself. Now, I invite you to share your story below. What part of this video resonated with you most? What will you start practicing today? Your words might be the encouragement someone else needs to keep going. Let's continue building calm homes, clear minds, and centered lives, together, one mindful step at a time.